Hello, my name is Spies, and you are watching this video because you've already made an appointment to come and see me as a new patient. Now, during a first consultation, I have to give the patients information so that they understand how my mind works. But that whole process takes about 45 minutes. Therefore, I thought it's much more appropriate to make you watch this video beforehand, because that frees up 45 minutes of our time so we can discuss your issues and see what is the best possible way to help you with your complaints. Now, we as humans get two types of diseases. We get acute disease and we get chronic disease. The definition of a chronic disease, anything that lasts longer than 3 months. So diabetes, epilepsy, asthma, rheumatoid arthritis, infertility, obesity, all types of cancers are all classified as chronic disease because they last longer than 3 months. And here comes the interesting fact. They all share one same single cause, because all diseases longer than 3 months comes from a state of inflammation. Now, what is inflammation? You may still remember the last time you sprained your ankle. The next morning your ankle was warm and red and sore and stiff and swollen. And it's good to have inflammation in your ankle after you've sprained it, because that's how the body is going to fix something that's damaged. But it's bad for any part of your body to be constantly in a state of inflammation, because in time that becomes chronic disease. So when I see any new patient in my practice, the first question that comes to my mind is this patient in a state of inflammation? If the patient does not have any inflammation, then there's very little for me to help the patient with. If the patient does already have inflammation, they may not have chronic disease yet, but it's coming. If the patient already complains about anything lasting longer than 3 months, then it's a given. The patient is in a state of inflammation. The question now rather becomes, what is the source of the inflammation? Because unless we can identify the source of the inflammation and eliminate it, if we cannot even control the inflammation, we are never going to control the chronic disease. Now, fortunately for us, there are only 8 possible sources of inflammation. The first reason why we develop inflammation stems from our diet, and we call it ABO. Now, ABO refers to your blood group or your genetic makeup. Now, my blood group was determined by the chromosomes I inherited from my mom and dad. The way my immune system functions has been determined by exactly those same chromosomes. So if I know a patient's blood group, I can already predict 85% accurately which foods can this patient safely eat, but also which foods will cause inflammation each and every time the patient eats it. So if we do not want to have any chronic disease, the first thing we may need to consider, change from the food we like eating that causes inflammation to the food we like eating that won't cause any inflammation. The second reason why diet causes chronic disease is called deficiencies. There are certain nutrients that are essential. Without them, the body can't function properly. Things like omega-3 fatty acids are strong anti-inflammatory, and they keep the body nicely in balance. But if we don't eat enough of those kinds of foods, we go out of balance, we develop inflammation for no other apparent reason but the deficiency in our diet. So if we want to have optimal health, we have to eat food that's genetically compatible, and secondly, we have to ensure that our diet is complete. The third reason why diet causes chronic disease is called sugar. Now, sugar is the fuel for inflammation. Call it the petrol on the fire. But please take note, when I say sugar, I don't only think about the white granules in the teaspoon. I think about any possible food or drink that will break down and eventually become sugar. So in my mind, if I say sugar, I see chocolates and sweets and Easter eggs. If I say sugar, I think about all the starchy vegetables, butternut, pumpkin, beetroot, potato, carrot, sweet potato. When I say sugar, I think about fruit and fruit juices. I also think about all the grain, whether it's wheat or rye or spelt or oats or semolina or quinoa or maize. All of them break down into sugar, and of course alcohol does so too. So the first question I get from patients is, are you now trying to say I'm not allowed to eat any of those foods? Of course we may. But just think about it sensibly. If we do not exercise today, the maximum amount of sugar the body can utilize, 6 teaspoons. The average American today consumes anything between 22 and 80 teaspoons of sugar. Now, if it sounds as if the Americans are mad, who in their right mind eats 80 teaspoons of sugar in one day, let me quickly refresh your memory. 1 glass of a fizzy cold drink, 1 glass of 100% pure fruit juice contains anything between 8 and sometimes up to 35 teaspoons of sugar. If we think about a typical day, if you wake up in the morning and for breakfast you have some cereal, or you have some toast, or you have some fruit, or some muesli, or some yogurt, all of those typical breakfast foods contain sugar. And then with that you have a cup of tea or coffee and you add some sugar to that. And a little bit later you're a bit of peckish, so you eat something that's more healthy. So you have a banana over here and you have an apple over there. And then come lunchtime, you're health conscious, so you want to eat good quality food. So you think about all the good vegetables and you eat butternut, pumpkin, beetroot, potato, carrot, sweet potato. You have a glass of orange juice with that, or you have a fizzy cold drink. During the afternoon you may nibble on another fruit again. And tonight with your supper containing a butternut, pumpkin, beetroot, the same vegetables again, you may have a glass of wine or a whiskey. And suddenly it's very easy to even exceed 80 teaspoons a day. So nobody says we can't have sugar, but we have to balance it with our physical activity. Now think about it logically. 1 medium-sized apple contains 6 teaspoons of sugar. So you can see that if you don't exercise, you can quickly get into trouble just by eating a normal diet. The next reason why we develop chronic diseases are linked. There are 2 actually. The one is called sport or physical activity, and it's linked to sleep. Now, physical activity is so important to the body for so many different reasons. But if you overdo it, how do you feel? Think about somebody who ran the Comrades Marathon yesterday. Today they are warm and red and sore and stiff and swollen in a state of inflammation. When does the body fix that inflammation? Tonight when you sleep properly. So you can go out of balance in 2 ways, either by overtraining or by undersleeping. And the combined effect of those 2 factors will give you more inflammation on a daily basis. Another reason for chronic disease, weight. We look at the patient's weight on the scale, we look at the lean body mass to fat mass ratio, but the one that we're particularly interested in, does the patient store fat on the inside of the abdominal muscles? Why is that important? The fat stored on the inside of the abdominal muscles becomes hormonally active. It produces what we call inflammatory cytokines, and those things will fuel the inflammation fire exactly the same way the sugar does. So we know from experience, we never cure the diabetes, the epilepsy, the asthma or the cancer unless we help the patient get rid of a hot belly fat too. Another reason for chronic disease, stress. Now, if we think about it logically, when we had stress, say 5,000 years ago, it was usually caused by something physical, like a lion roaring just here behind us. Now, our bodies had to survive that lion, and our body had to go through certain changes. The body went into what we call sympathetic overload. Now, sympathetic is the state where we fight, freeze, or run away. Now, the stress hormone that regulates this is called cortisol. Cortisol has got, amongst others, 3 effects on the body. Cortisol elevates our blood pressure, cortisol elevates our blood sugar, and cortisol switches our immune system off. Now, those were all very appropriate 5,000 years ago when the lion roared here behind us. Because in order to survive that lion, my brain had to make a split-second decision. Do I turn around and face the lion, or do I run away and try and get into that tree? So my blood pressure went up so my brain could get sufficient perfusion. The second thing, my blood sugar went up. Why? Because my liver glycogen store dumped a lot of sugar into my bloodstream because those sugar were supposed to fuel the muscles for either the fight or the run. And the third thing that happened, my immune system shut down. Why? Because if I had to face the lion, I need all my resources, and I couldn't divide between the lion and the bacteria floating around in my bloodstream. So today we are also faced with stress, but hardly ever lions wanting to eat us. But whether it's the drought, or the political situation, or the finances, or the mother-in-law, whenever we get stressed, our bodies go through exactly the same physiological processes as 5,000 years ago. So blood pressure goes up, blood sugar goes up, and immune system shuts down. The only problem is there's no lion to run away from. So what happens to all that sugar in our bloodstream? We don't use it. And you know by now that sugar causes inflammation. So if we don't immediately consume that sugar with our muscles by running away or fighting, then the body has got to go to plan B. And that plan B is called insulin. Insulin is the hormone that mops up all the excess sugar that we don't immediately utilize. And insulin does so by converting the sugar into fat. So it is totally true that we do not get fat from eating fat. We get fat from eating sugar, or when we become stressed and our liver releases all the sugar into our bloodstream that we don't immediately utilize, because insulin will come and mop up all that sugar by converting it into fat. Now if that fat then gets stored in the abdominal cavity, it causes even more inflammation. Now a second reason why we're not too happy about insulin. Insulin causes inflammation. So first of all we get inflammation from the sugar, and now we get a double dose of inflammation from the insulin. And this will fuel all these chronic disease processes even more. Now the last possible reason why any of us can develop any chronic disease process is the environment we live in. And from our environment we get viruses, bacteria, parasites, heavy metal toxicity, cell phone radiation, pollution in the air we inhale, toxic substances in the water we drink, radioactive fallout from Fukushima in Japan, and each and every one of these external agents may enter our bodies and induce a state of inflammation. Now, very important, we have to identify those sources of inflammation today and eliminate them. Now, in order to do so, we are going to do 6 tests for you at the surgery today. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to check your blood pressure and pulse. Then we're going to do a Chinese tongue diagnosis. So we look at your tongue, and like the Chinese for the past 5,000 years, we will get valuable information just by looking at your tongue. The third thing we will do is look at your teeth, because your dental history is paramount importance to your current state of health. So we'll have to check and see, do you have heavy metals and what other dental procedures were done in the past. Then we're going to take digital photos of your eyes and do iridology. And once we've done those 4 things, we're going to do 2 tests on our computer system. The first one is called the oligo scan. Now the oligo scan is very, very new technology that shows us what's going on inside the cells in our bodies. For a cell to function properly, it needs good nutrients. But the cell also needs to be able to eliminate all the toxins effectively, otherwise it becomes toxic in the cells. Now the oligo scan will look at the tissue in the body, and it will tell us, do we have all the typical minerals we need for proper function? And secondly, does the body eliminate heavy metals and other toxins effectively from our systems? The last test that we will do at the surgery is called the Quantic test, and that's a system from Germany, and it looks at the electromagnetic or spirit emotional side. So once we've done those 6 tests, we will be able to tell you, do you have inflammation? But even more importantly, what is the source of inflammation? And only then can we devise a logical, sensible plan of action. Please take note, I often see patients coming from very far away in the hope that this new doctor is going to fix my problem for me. And then I always have to disappoint them. Why? Let me explain. Can I eat correctly for your genetic makeup? No. Can I avoid sugar for you? No. Can I go exercise tomorrow morning so you can get fit? No. Can I go to bed tonight at 9 so you can have a proper night's rest? No. Can I de-stress for you? Can I forgive somebody else for you? No. I wish I could, because if I could, I would have guaranteed you results at the practice. But I'm not in control of this process. So if the patient leaves my practice thinking, nah, I'm not going to change my diet, there's nothing I can do about it. So the best possible results are going to be achieved if we work together. So what's the patient's responsibility? Manage those 8 factors in the wheel to ensure that you generate as little as possible inflammation. So in summary, eat the food that you are genetically compatible with. Make sure there's no deficiencies in your diet. 3, keep your sugar intake balanced with your physical activity. Do the physical activity, but please do not overdo it. If you do more physical activity, make sure you've got sufficient time to rest properly, because the body doesn't get stronger when you exercise. The body gets stronger after you've exercised when you rest and sleep. We also have to look at the patient's weight, so we'll have to manage the weight. We have to look at the stress, and then lastly, like we said, we have to look at the factors from the environment. Now, if we want to achieve the best possible results in the shortest possible time, we have to work together. So the patient's responsibility, manage those 8 factors. My responsibility, make sure we build the whole healing process on 5 very important levels. Now, the first level we always start with, no matter why the patient comes to see me, we always start with water. Why water? Well, let's think about it logically. What is the main constituent of the body? 72% of what is sitting on the chair is water. So let's ask 2 logical questions. If the bath water is dirty, how long do we have to bath in the bath water before we get clean? If the water is dirty, you can bath as long as you like, you're not going to get clean. So let's ask another question. If the water that I'm drinking is toxic, how much toxic water must I drink before I get healthy? You're not going to get healthier, you're just going to get more toxic. So because of that, we have to ensure all the water that enters our body, whether it's from the water we drink in a glass or in a cup with tea and coffee or whatever, we have to make sure each and every drop of water that enters our body is supportive to health. And this, of course, includes the water that we boil the potatoes in on the stove. So every drop of water that comes into our body needs to have 3 properties. The water is 1, clean. 2, the water is stable. And 3, the water is germ-free. Now, if we talk about tap water commonly contains chlorine, aluminium, ammonia, heavy metals, insecticides, pesticides, herbicides, hormones, antibiotics, and raw sewage. And all those things are detrimental to our health. So to drink tap water and to expect good health is most probably not going to be realistic. Then people say, but that's easy, I'll switch to bottled water. Now, plastic bottles come from the petrochemical industry, and they contain plastic xenoestrogens. Now, a xenoestrogen is a synthetic chemical with hormone-like properties. So it is a stronger estrogen than your body's own natural estrogen. And yes, males, we all have estrogen in our systems. The problem is, if we get all the plastic estrogen into our bodies, it starts changing our body in slightly subtle ways. But with the more plastics entering our system, the less subtle these changes become. Now, plastic bottles contains things like bisphenol A, bisphenol S, methyl alcohol, dioxins, and phthalates. And all these things are highly toxic. They have been known as carcinogenic. So they've got the potential to even cause cancer in the body. So to drink tap water is not going to do it. To switch to bottled water is not going to help either. So we'll have to look, unfortunately, at a filtration system of some sorts to make sure that each and every drop of water that we get into our bodies is 1, clean, secondly, stable. Now, what does stable mean? Stable means it contains all the appropriate minerals as in nature. Calcium, magnesium, potassium, zinc, selenium, because those minerals keeps the water molecules stable. But if we have, for instance, a water filtration system that takes everything out of the water molecules are highly unstable, and each and every time we drink it, we will cause free radical damage in our digestive system, and that will put our bodies into a state of inflammation. So we have to ensure the water is 1, clean, no rubbish in the water. 2, the water is stable, it contains all the appropriate minerals. And 3, the water is germ-free. Now the 2 safe ways today to get germ-free water. Your water filtration system that you use must either use ozone gas or it must use ultraviolet light, because those are 2 safe and effective ways that we know how to kill the germs in the water. So once we've got the water under control, we look at the next level. The next level is diet. Now our diet has got 3 properties too. The food that we eat needs to be 1, genetically correct. The second property, the food needs to be organic. Now unfortunately most of the food we eat is already genetically modified and no longer healthy. So we have to source the best possible food we can source. But unfortunately in our day and age now, that's no longer good enough. Today we are forced to supplement. Now let me tell you why. The World Health Organization predicted in 2015, of all human beings alive on planet Earth today, 1 in 2 males and 1 in 3 females will now develop cancer during their lifetime. Why is this? Because of 2 factors. The first factor, the past 50 years, the human species has produced 144,000 new chemicals that weren't in existence on planet Earth 50 years ago. Those 144,000 chemicals are in the soil, in the air, in the rain clouds, in our food, and unfortunately in our bodies too. And it makes us extremely toxic. The second reason why the prediction for cancer is so high is because of the same 50 years the human species did commercial farming, and we totally depleted the soil of all the nutrients. The nutrients are no longer in the soil, therefore no longer in the plants, and therefore no longer in the food on our plates. And because of excessive toxicity from our environment, and because of these poor quality foods that we eat nowadays, the risk for cancer has shot up, like I said, 1 in 2 males, 1 in 3 females, predicted in 2015. So if we do not want to be part of that statistic, we have to do things in a different way. We have to, 1, ensure that we drink the cleanest possible water we can. 2, we eat the best quality food we can. But even that's no longer good enough. Unfortunately today, we are forced to supplement. But we have to be very careful with supplements, because that's another minefield. We get 3 types of supplements. The first kind we get is called a food synthetic vitamin. Now a synthetic vitamin is something that is produced in a laboratory. They don't give you the orange, they don't even give you the vitamin C. They just give you the active ingredient in the vitamin C, and that's called ascorbic acid. Now without the rest of the vitamin C, ascorbic acid just doesn't work very well. So when we talk about vitamins, we cannot supplement with the synthetic vitamins because they don't work. So we'll either have to look at food matrix technology, or the best kind we've got in the world today is called a food concentrate. Now a food concentrate is exactly like the name says, concentrated food. So when we talk about that, when we look at the orange as an example again, they don't give you the whole orange, but the only things they remove from that orange is the excess fiber and the excess water. The rest of the orange is condensed into a little tablet that you take with your meal. And those food concentrates have been proven in court in America to work 1,210% better than the synthetic supplements. And here comes the shocker. If you now leave here today and you go to any of the pharmacies, or you go to that very expensive health shop, and you stand in front of the shelf and you go multivit, 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 which one am I going to take? I don't care which one you take. chances of you buying rubbish is 99.8%. Why? Because 99.8% of all the supplements produced in the world today are all synthetic. So if we want to have good quality health, we have to ensure that the water we drink is the best possible water we can source. We eat the best possible food we can source. And unfortunately, it's no longer optional, we have to supplement. Now you may wonder, why does it take so much time to talk about water and food and supplements? Because we as humans, 80% of our current state of health is determined by the water we drink, the food we eat, and the supplements we may or may not take. So it is extremely important that we get these factors in place. So when you come and see me as a medical doctor, I have to ensure that the water, the food, and the supplements are in place. Yet, when I was at university for 6 years, I didn't even receive a 5-minute lecture on these topics. So don't expect your regular medical doctor to talk to you about these things. But now you understand why it is that important. So if I can help you get these factors in place, when you come and see me at the surgery, we only have the remaining 20% to help you with. Now our fourth level is internal imbalances. When do we develop disease? Only when we are susceptible. What causes susceptibility? Internal imbalances. So if I can determine the internal imbalances that you may have, and we then proceed to eliminate them, we take away the susceptibility, and therefore you cannot have the disease anymore because you're no longer susceptible. Now your eyes, your tongue will give us that information when I see you. And then our top level is our electromagnetic or homeopathic level. On this level, we stimulate the patient to change. So we stimulate the immune system. And finally, the immune system starts killing the viruses, the bacteria, the parasites that shouldn't have been in your body in the first place. We stimulate the body to detoxify, and as the body gets rid of the heavy metals and the chemicals and the pollutants and the air and the rubbish and the water we drank, everything starts working better. So we'll wake up in the morning and our mind is nice and sharp and clear again. And we get out of bed and we've got no aches and pains and stiffness in our muscles and joints anymore. And we discover, wow, I've got so much more energy. My mood is therefore so much better. I start sleeping better at night. I stimulate the patient to deal with the emotional issues. Finally, they forgive whoever they need to forgive. And one after another, all the annoying symptoms disappear. So when you come and see me, we are going to do those 5 things. Firstly, check your blood pressure and pulse, do your Chinese tongue diagnosis, have a look at your teeth, take the digital photos of your eyes, do the iridology, and then we do the 2 tests on the computer system, the oligo scan like I've mentioned, that looks inside the cells to check and see is the cell functioning properly, is the cell toxic, and then we do our Quantic, and then once we've got all that information put together, then we'll start building on those 5 different levels. Get the water in place, make sure you eat the best possible food. 3, make sure the supplements are in place. Then we look at the internal imbalances that you may have, eliminate them. And lastly, use homeopathic electromagnetic medicines to stimulate your body to start making the necessary changes so your body can heal again. Well, I'm very excited about these things, and I'm very excited to help you restoring your health. So I'm looking forward to seeing you soon, and then we'll put all these puzzle pieces together and see what is the most appropriate plan of action to help you restore your health again. Seeing you soon. Keep well. Bye-bye.